Hi, everybody. In this video, we're going to walk through how to do exercise 3. Well, most of exercise 3. The first couple questions deal with the finding specific research articles in the Web of Science. We've already made a video on how to use the Web of Science, so I won't go into that. Other than to note, when you're, pay attention when you're finding those articles to look at I give you the description and look for articles. Make sure whatever you find kind of fits that description. Is it published in the correct year or year span? Does it have the name of the author? If there's like a specific author you're looking for, are they actually an author in of the paper? And any other stuff about the journal. Is it like the title, if it's supposed to be in a certain journal, or a journal with a certain name or something, something in the name that it fits that description. Okay, but let's focus on the questions 3 through 6 for this week that are using the journal citation reports. So to do that, let's start by going to the journal citation reports. We start off in the UMS portal. So here I am. I find the Fogler Library. Click on that. That opens up. We go to the databases, and I want the journal citation reports. So that starts with J. And there we are, journal citation reports. I click on that. It opens it up here. Great. And the journal citation reports is a online database. What they do is they don't focus on the individual papers or research articles. That's Web of Science. Journal citation reports instead focuses on the journals themselves and tries to look at different ways to get a sense of the impact the journals are having. Is this a journal that is having a lot of impact? And there's different ways to measure impact, and some ways that JCR, Journal Citation Reports, doesn't touch on. There's a lot of ways you can measure impact, but that's kind of what they're getting at, and particularly certain types of impact that we see reflected in citations. So if a journal is publishing papers that no one ever cites, it never shows up in any future research studies in their citations, it doesn't seem to be shaping the future of research, that's not having much of an impact. Versus if a journal is publishing papers that every paper they publish is starting to get quoted in lots of other new research studies, that's having impact. That's what JCR is looking at. So to begin with, our example this week, we're just going to focus on one journal, the American Journal of Education. So I start off by typing the name in. Here is the kind of our search link. So I put in American Journal of Education, and it starts looking for me, and there it goes. Here it is, some other ways it might have looked at it. So I click on the American Journal of Education, and it gives us some information, takes us to their webpage. Notice right up here it says JCR year is 2022, and you can pick up for different years. Now you might think, gosh, that's kind of old. Why is it 2022? It's already 2024. We'll see in a minute that the way they calculate impact, you can't do it on the fly. It's kind of looking backwards a bit. So we'll see in just a minute why that's the case. But it's possible in the middle of this assignment that they may update that. That happened once when I was doing this. And if it does, my things aren't going to work. So make sure it is still 2022. You can always go back if for some reason they release 2023 tomorrow. Okay, so here we are. Let's look at journals performance and the journal impact factor. This is kind of the key way. The journal impact factor is, as JCR does it, is probably the most widely cited, most widely used, most widely understood measure of the impact that a journal is having. And you can think about it as it reflects the average number of times that their articles are getting cited over some given time period, typically 2 years. The way it works is that it looks backwards in time. Well, let me explain this. So you start with let's say for the 2022, right? We're using 2022. It looks at articles not published in 2022. It looks at articles that were published in this journal in 2020 and 2021. All the articles they published. And of those articles they published, how many times were those articles they published in 2020 and 2021 cited? How often did they show up being cited in new research published in 2022? What's nice, well, we see that actually right here, we can see that that number is 2.5. Here's their 2022 journal impact factor is 2.5. And again, that's the average number of times that articles that they published in 2020 and 2021 were cited in journals, not this journal, well, not just this journal, but any journal, well, not any journal that they're monitoring. How often are those articles being cited in journals they're monitoring in 2022? 2.5 times. So that's actually our answer, oops, right there to question number 3. Based on the 2022 journal impact factor, the average number of times that articles published by this journal in 2020 and 2021 were cited in 2022. Well, we see that's 2.5. So it's right there. Question C is our answer, 2.5. So every article that they published in that 2-year time span was on average cited 2.5 times. It's kind of nice. They give you a calculation, which is great. Some other measures people use, they don't show you the math like this. You're kind of stuck kind of guessing a little bit how do they calculate things. This is very nice. And you can see the formula right here. So the denominator is the number of citable items that they published in 2020 and 2021. So they published 17 in 2020, 20 in 2021. So a total of 37 articles were published during that 2-year time period that were citable. What we mean by citable is the journal may have published some additional articles that they never intended to get cited. A common one is the end of the year they have an article that is just a thank you to all the people that reviewed for them that year. You know, no one's going to cite that, so you don't want to count it as that 37. There may be others as well. So they published a total of 37 articles kind of in that window, that 2-year window. And of those, you see in the numerator, those 37 articles were cited a total of 92 times. So of these 37 articles, in 2020, they were cited 67 times. I'm sorry, in the articles that were published in 2020 were cited a total of 67 times in 2022. And the articles that were published in 2021 were cited a total of 25 times in 2022, right? So the 2020 articles were cited 67 times in 22. The 2021 articles were cited 25 times in 2022, gives us the 92 total times those articles were cited. So again, 2.5. Every article on average is being cited by someone 2.5 times. So that's how that works. Pretty straightforward over that 2-year time span. Now, you'll notice there's also this other estimate here, the journal impact factor without self-citations. Now, this is kind of an interesting issue that can come up, is that journals, if you think about it, if I want to measure the impact that the journal is having, some journals cite their own stuff a fair bit. So they'll get a lot of citations, but it's in the same journal. So that's not really having the same impact as if all those 92 articles were in different journals out there around. If all 92 of them are in the same journal, it's not having that same impact. And this can be an issue for some journals. We may talk about this at the end or in a different video. That there's some interesting things. But so anyway, one way around that is to calculate your impact factor without self-citations, which in this context means a journal citing, that the journal's citing papers published in the same journal. So to look at those 92 and throw out any of them that in 2022. Look at those 92 articles that showed up in 2022. Let's see if the calculation maybe says it. That it doesn't go into. See, it's here. It's taking out the self-citations. It's saying of those 92 articles, 2 of them were actually, of those 92 articles that were cited in 2022, of those 92 citations in 2022, 2 of them were in the American Journal of Education. So it subtracts those out from it. So it's only 90 citations that weren't in the American Journal of Education, which gives us a citation, our impact factor of 2.4. Okay? So there's a couple questions. Let's look at our next question here. When calculating the journal impact factor, including journal self-citations may inflate the appearance of how widely the journal is cited because they're just cases of a journal citing articles from the same journal. And yeah, that is definitely a true statement, right? True. Okay, so let's keep going. So that's the journal impact factor. And we can kind of hang out here a little bit more on this website. Let's scroll down. It gives us kind of trends, how the impact factors changed a little bit over time. It also has this new measure, and we're going to talk about this. This is actually going to be our next question that we have, and that's the Journal Citation Indicator, or JCI. And this is a newer measure, but you're going to start seeing it more, I think. So I want to introduce it now, even though at the moment it's nowhere near as widely used or reported as the journal impact factor. There's clearly a trend to doing this. And what the Journal Citation Indicator does is it normalizes those impact factors. It kind of does this the same way, but it normalizes the number of citations, I should say, over a 3-year period. So it's 3 years instead of 2. And so it's a little bit longer time period. But the key is this normalization. What it does is it takes into consideration different disciplines tend to have more or fewer citations. Some disciplines, the articles they publish are expected to have many, many, many citations. So impact factors in those journals that publish in that discipline tend to be higher. Medical journals often have higher impact factors because of that. Other disciplines, there's not that tradition or that expectation of lots of citations for every paper you publish. So their impact factors will be smaller. So this instead, it takes the kind of how many citations that the journals are getting and normalizes it based on the discipline. So every discipline or different disciplinary areas have their impact factors calculated in different ways. And it's set up so that after this mathematical normalization, that a JCI, a journal citation indicator of 1, means that the average that journal has the average number of citations for their papers for that discipline. As the guide says here, a JCI of 1.5 means it gets 50%. The 0.5, it's 50% more citations than is averaged for that discipline, and a JCI of 0.5 would mean they're 50% less. They're only half as many citations as you expect for journals in that discipline. So it kind of equalizes things across disciplines a little bit better. So I think it's a nice measure that we're going to start seeing a lot more. So we see here that the journal citation indicator for the American Journal of Education is 1.02, which just means that well, 1 we know, so it's really close to 1, so it's like about the close to the average. And in fact, that 0.02 would tell us, right, that it's 2%, right? If zero point 0.5 is 50% more, 0.02 is 2% more. It's their papers are cited about 2% more than average for journals in this area. Um, and that's the answer for question 5, right? Which of the following statements provide the correct value and interpretation for the journal citation index? And it's going to be, what is that? It's going to be A, isn't it? 1.02, indicating 2% more citations than average. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's keep going. And again, you won't see that much. You're much more likely to see the journal impact factor for now, but this is where we're heading. Education is kind of one of those disciplines that suffers a little bit. Areas of education don't get as many citations because the way the journals, they just don't, our articles don't typically have the same number of hundreds of citations you can see in some other disciplines, okay, for each article. Hundreds of references, I should say. Okay, let's keep going. So citation distribution, kind of just some interesting things you can see. Kind of this just gives you a sense of how many times different articles were cited. And now we see, so like a lot of them were cited somewhere around 1 to 6 times. One of those articles was cited a lot. So that one article is helping to boost up their impact factor. That's kind of good to know. It gives you information about open access, how many of their materials available kind of on open access. So that's good. And then we have ranks, and their journals can be ranked in 2 different ways. They can be ranked based on their impact factors or based on their citation indicators. And what this does is, again, it kind of looks at all the journals within one of those disciplines, one of those areas. In this case, the categories education and educational research. And it looks at all those journals. Then it just ranks your impact factors. When we're looking at the rank by journal impact factor, it ranks the journals based on impact factor and gives you a sense of where the journal is in those rankings. So we see here that for the American Journal of Education in 2022, using the journal impact factor, it's number 123 out of a total of 269 journals. So there's 269 journals in this group that they've formed, kind of related content, and this journal's 123 out of that, right? And it's at the second quartile. The 50, the percentile rank is 54.5. So kind of gives you a sense of how it compares. So it's kind of, right around the middle. So, a decent solid journal. Then that's our next question, isn't that? Question 6. What's the rank what is the 2022 rank based on the journal impact factor among journals in education and educational research? And we see it's 123 out of 269. So that's answer that's A is our answer. Now, some journals will show up in more than one category. Maybe it touches educational research and maybe something else, and so child development. So they may overlap, and you can get 2 different. There'll be different categories, so there'll be 2 different rankings based on which of these specific disciplines. So that can happen. So don't be surprised if you see that. I'm going to keep scrolling down. Oops. I'm going to keep scrolling down here a little bit. And we see there's also they're ranked by their journal citation indicator. And now this is kind of interesting that notice that the journal citation indicator, the ranking's gone up. It's 223 out of 759 journals. Instead of 123 out of 269, it's 223 out of 759 in that same category. So there's a lot more journals that are part of that group in the JCI, and the percentile rank's gone up. Now it's at the 70th percentile. So it looks a little better under using the JCI. And this is part of, there's a couple reasons why you might kind of think, why would they be different in that sense? Well, part of it, as you can see, is there's more journals. The JCI is capturing more journals. It's doing a 3-year period as well. So that also influences the numbers a little bit. But it also, again, captures a larger body of journals than the journal impact factor has historically. Now, part of what's going on that you're going to see in the next few years, and I think it's actually rolled out with the latest data for the journal impact factors, is they're broadening the number of journals they're including. That they're ultimately, if they're not already, their goal is to include all the journals in the Web of Science for both of these. So lots of journals that have historically not had journal impact factors will start getting impact factor scores. And that'll boost a lot of the existing journals, these that have been around for a while. Because now kind of there's all these newer journals and less established journals that have historically not had impact factor scores are going to start getting impact factors. So they're not going to be as high. So it'll help to boost up some of the existing journals. So they're going to start looking better because they are at a higher rank compared to all the journals that are out there. So the numbers are going to change a little bit over time, and I think that's a good thing. Don't just compare it in the more well-established journals. If you're saying it's at the 50th percentile for education journals, you need to capture all the education journals, not just the more well-established ones. So that's kind of where we're going with that. Citation network is kind of interesting. A few things here. I know we've got the answers to the questions, but kind of interesting. Cited half-life, kind of the median age for items that are being cited. So you can see that the articles are often cited way past that 2-year window, right? So you can see kind of here, they're citing the articles that they're looking for in 2022. We're citing articles from going back a number of years. So that's actually something to keep in mind. Notice the impact factor score is only based on these 2 years, where articles keep getting cited 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So it could still be having an impact down the line. That's part of, I personally am a little squeamish about the idea of a 2-year impact factor. I'm going to jump down here. I thought they've got, where is it? They also have a 5-year impact factor. I personally prefer the 5-year impact factor, that it looks over, instead of the 2 years, it's looking over a 5-year period. And you're seeing 3.3 citations when you're looking at articles going back 5 years, because now you're getting this older articles that have had more of a chance to be out there and for people to read them and get cited. 2 years is a very quick turnaround, which works in some disciplines a little better, again, like medicine, where things are happening rapidly and something gets cited, you want to start, if something gets published, you want to start citing it right away and kind of working off of that latest research. Other disciplines, the process can be a little slower. And so you have to, the paper's got to get published, then people have to read it, then they need to do a study that kind of looks at that and then publish the findings and talk about that study. So I like the little longer time span, I think is nice. We won't worry, these are more kind of mathematical ways of geeking out over the impact. And then you can also look at I think this is nice, kind of the journals that are citing the American Journal of Education. And here's where you could see a problem. If notice, there's lots of journals citing it. I'm kind of getting a little dizzy spinning that around. If it turns out that a lot of the citations are coming from 1 or 2 journals, that may also give you a sense of, even if it's getting a lot of citations, it's not necessarily having the impact that you're thinking about. Okay, which leads to another issue that I may talk about in a different video or maybe just an announcement. Okay, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Went a little longer than I thought, but some interesting stuff to keep in mind. Okay, take care. Bye bye.